guys, what is up? Brendan here, aka Brenbo, bring you guys back another video on the channel. As you can see from the title, the Terminator is broken. And what I mean by that is I think that the car needs a thermostat. Just because as soon as the coolant basically gets to regular temperature, it just doesn't cool. It just keeps rising from there. So I think the thermostat is stuck closed, not allowing coolant in. So I'm about to find out. I have a thermostat, all new coolant, because I'm pretty sure this is stock or like coolant from 2003, so it's really old. It's probably nasty. Even though the car only has 20,000 miles, coolant can still get nasty. It can corrode from things. So there can be rust in there, and I actually think that the coolant's gonna be super nasty. So I'm gonna drain that, switch out the thermostat, backfill it with new coolant, which vac filling uses a compressor. It basically creates a vacuum and then sucks coolant in, preventing air bubbles, and you don't have to bleed it because you vac filled it. If you don't know what it is, just look it up. Vacuum filling basically with coolant. So I'm going to vac fill the Terminator, and then it should hopefully allow the car to idle at regular temperature, because if I let this car idle for about 10 minutes or so, it will just overheat really badly. So I'm hoping this is the problem. If not, it could be a head gasket, it could be a water pump. It can lead to a lot of things. And I'm really hoping that this thing is gonna be cheap to fix and not cost me a lot of money, because I gotta put that money to other upgrades. So let's get into this. This is super easy on this car, a lot easier than other cars I've worked on. So thermostat right here. I didn't go with a aftermarket one that runs cooler, because in my opinion, it's not good for the engine. You don't want your engine to run under operating temperature, therefore it's kind of like you driving your car when you warm it up. It's not operating temperature, and therefore could damage your engine unless it's very heavily modified. So I just went with a stock 180 degree thermostat. If it fails, I'll just get another one. These aren't that expensive, and just from what I've read in forums and my experience, I don't want the engine to run cooler than it's supposed to. Then also, I have a O-ring for the thermostat housing. You don't have to get this, but I always replace every O-ring that I take apart because they can be squished and then prevent leaks in the future. And you just might as well buy like a $1 O-ring. Like, what's the point not to? And then I have 9 gallons of distilled water. This is the type of water you want to use when you're using anything in the cooling system, because there's no other materials in it. It's just basically water. So I'm first going to put water and this pre-stone like flushing, cleaning kind of additive. I'm running the car for 10 minutes, heat all the way up. It should clean everything out. So this basically just with enough distilled water to fill the system. And then I'm going to drain that and then put the actual solution in, which is Motorcraft Gold coolant. And it's not mixed, so I'm gonna have to mix it with more distilled water, so that's why I have like 9 gallons of this stuff. So that's a pretty good way to do it. You wanna flush it with pure water, just try to get everything out of there, and then put the actual coolant inside. It's very hard to record under the car, but it's pretty simple. Basically, you're just gonna pull the lower radiator hose from the radiator, and that will release most of the coolant in the system. There's also a little screwable drain on the radiator, but most of the time, if you have higher mileage, it'll be seized or it'll crack on you, and then you'll kind of have to buy a whole new plug, or depending on what you broke, a whole new radiator. So I'm just gonna pull the hose, even though I think I'll be able to pull the plug. The hose will probably get more out anyway, and then the thermostat is basically connected to the lower radiator hose or somewhere in that area. I haven't looked yet, but I just know it's a silver housing, and you just 2 screws, pull it apart, and the thermostat's right there. It's super simple. There's like no shields on this car, so you jack it up and it's just right in your face. So it's very hard to miss. I'm sorry I can't record under the car. I've said this in previous videos. It's just really hard because I have a DSLR. It's kind of big, and I don't have someone to help record me. So it just makes it really hard, and I'm really sorry about that, but I try to explain things the best I can. So I'm going to unscrew the reservoir cap just to make it flow maybe a little better when I drain it. And obviously this is when I vac fill it. I'm going to use the reservoir to fill it. This is for the supercharger, that's a separate coolant reservoir. This is for the engine compartment, which I'll be focusing on because that's where the thermostat's located. And also, if you do the thermostat, you basically have to drain the whole coolant anyway, so you might as well just put brand new coolant in and do the whole flush. I'll be using a pretty big tray. On film, this doesn't look that big, but this is probably about 8 to 10 gallons. I don't know how much the system holds, but you're gonna wanna have something kinda flat and long that holds a lot of capacity, because you're not gonna be able to fit a bucket like this under the car. It's just not gonna work unless you have a lift. So it is day 2. I kind of let the car drain overnight a little bit, into a tub, and I already put it in some water jugs from the distilled water that I used, because I already filled it with the cleaner and the distilled water right now, and I just ran the car and let it cool, and I'm gonna drain that, and that'll be the final flush until I put the actual coolant in. But let me show you guys the coolant. So this is supposed to be gold, almost see-through yellow, and as you can see, this is from the top of the tub because the dirt sinks. So this is pretty yellow, but this is like brown. This was super nasty, and this is actually the very, very bottom. And as you guys can see, it's just pure brown. And you can just see dirt falling. So it was a pretty clogged system. The radiator didn't look stuck or appear to be broken in any way, but thermostats also have material in them, and that's when they open and close. So if the material is defective or anything, then it won't operate correctly. So the only really way you can test it is if you put in water that was like 180 degrees and see if it actually opened. But that's the only way to really test it. So you can't always just look at a thermostat and know if it's good or not. On my daily car, I replaced the thermostat, and it was clearly stuck closed. Like, you could definitely see the spring was closed. I obviously didn't drain all the coolant out because you have to drain it from the block, and I really don't feel like doing that because you have to put new sealant on the threads that go to the block, and I don't have any of that. So I've been draining just from the radiator, all the hoses. So I got quite a bit out, but I know I didn't get all of it out, so that's why I did this other flush to get the coolant that was in the engine into like the radiator area, so when I drain that, it's the old coolant. But it took about 4 distilled waters to fill it up, even though I just had a little bit out of cleaner. So I have 3 left, but I have 2 huge jugs of coolant, which should make up for the distilled water and everything. So I'm pretty sure I'll have enough. I'm not too worried. But I'm kind of glad that this overheating issue did come to be, because if it didn't, I'd be riding around with this really, really dirty coolant. Not good for your engine at all. So maybe it was a sign just to change my coolant, because you know, I didn't really think about it being a 2003, 20K miles, no one really changed it probably. And coolant over time loses its properties, so it just turns the water, and that's not good. So I'm kind of happy I ended up doing this just for the coolant's sake. So I have my second flush. As you can see, it's pretty nasty. I would say almost as bad as the first flush. So this is definitely proof you should definitely flush at least one time, because I flushed the whole system, but this is probably what was in the engine, and it got swished around everywhere when I started it for like 10 minutes. So now, this is a fresh bucket. I'm gonna mix coolant and water in there, about a 50-50 mix. I don't drive in the winter, so I could do like a 60-40 or something like that, but I'm just do 50-50. As you guys can see how yellow and clear that is? That's how it's supposed to be. And I already know when I put this new coolant in, it's gonna get a little nasty because obviously I didn't get 100% out, but for sure it'll be a lot better if I did the 2 flushes. So I will try to explain this the best I can. Basically, there's a seal on the reservoir connected to this, so it is sealed completely. You have a line running into the coolant bucket, air hose connected to make the vacuum happen, and then basically a tube right here to suck in air. All these switches are closed right now. I'm gonna open up this switch and this switch to allow vacuum to happen. You can't see the gauge very well, I already tried zooming in, but it'll go from 0 to about 25 pounds. 20 to 25 pounds is where you want it to be. And then I'm going to close the air valve, take this assembly off, and then all these hoses will kind of be pinched in because the vacuum will suck everything in. And then I'm going to pull this lever, allow the coolant to be sucked in, and then that's why you don't want this to go low, because it'll suck in air instead of coolant. So then you suck coolant in until this runs out of pressure, and then the whole system is full. I recommend doing this for Cobras because everyone says they're really hard to bleed or burble because you have a lot of bleeding spots on the car. If you do this, you don't have to do any bleeding because it already does it for you. So you'll see that needle start to go up. Air compressor line is off, and you want to keep this for about 5 minutes held with vacuum, and you want to watch the gauge. If it loses pressure, you have a leak somewhere in your coolant system. If you do that, don't fill it with coolant, it's going to leak out, or air will just get back into the system. So after about 5 minutes, making sure there's no leak, then you can flip the switch and allow the coolant to go in. So it is now sucking in this coolant. The level will drop very fast, so this is why you have to be prepared and ready. So I'll get back to you after this is done. It is the next day again. I ran the car for about 45 minutes and it runs perfect. So it's either there was air in the system or the thermostat was bad. Either one, I don't really care. I'm just glad that the car is finally fixed and it wasn't expensive. So now that's fixed, I can go to more mods and everything. And I can actually drive the car now because I haven't driven the car in like 3 weeks because I've been busy with work. It's kind of a short video, but I want to share all the problems I have with this car. So if you guys have a New Edge or a Cobra and you have a problem like this, that you can maybe watch my video and maybe you have the same problem. So I did that with the Audi, I'm gonna do that with the Cobra. So I hope you guys enjoyed me diagnosing this problem with the Cobra. And stay tuned for mods now that they're coming and racing videos, which will happen in Mexico, obviously. And I hope you guys liked this video. I know it's short, like I said, kind of boring probably to some people, but different content is good. So sorry about that. I know I was like super serious in this also because I was trying to give the most information I could, so apologize for that too, I guess. But I'll see you guys in the next video for more fun things, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.